the tyrant of Baghdad, the 20-minute epic. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we are undertaking a deep, detailed dive into the life of one of the most consequential, and arguably one of the most monstrous figures of the 20th century, Saddam Hussein al-Tikrit. For nearly a quarter of a century, his name was synonymous with brutal power, relentless war, and absolute fear. He was the man who transformed Iraq from a developing nation into a hyper-militarized police state, challenged the world's superpowers, and ultimately plunged his own country into ruin. This is not just a story of politics. It's a terrifying lesson in how one man's ruthless ambition can shatter the lives of millions. We are tracing the history of Saddam Hussein, from the obscurity of his birth to the gallows of his execution. Grab a drink, settle in, and let's dive into this extended biography. The making of a dictator, early life and political awakening. Saddam's life began in hardship in Halabja, a small, rural village near Tikrit in 1937. His defining feature was his connection to his uncle, Kharal Talfa, an ardent Arab nationalist and former army officer who instilled in the young Saddam a love for power and a deep resentment of Western influence. Saddam was not an intellectual or a military academy success. His talent lay in political maneuvering and violence. In 1957, he joined the Ba'ath Party, a pan-Arab, secular movement that promised Arab unity and socialism. His status was cemented in 1959, when he participated in a botched but brazen assassination attempt on then Prime Minister Abdul Karim Qasim. He fled into exile, a wounded fugitive turned political martyr. This early violence was not an aberration. It was his template for success. The rise of the security state, 1968 to 1979. When the Ba'ath Party returned to power in 1968, Saddam was appointed vice chairman, a seemingly secondary role that masked his true influence. He became the architect of modern Iraq's dual reality. The Golden Decade, under his leadership, Iraq nationalized its oil industry in the early 1970s. The massive windfall was used to fund a radical program of social uplift. Iraq built new universities, hospitals, and infrastructure. Education and healthcare became free for all citizens, and Iraq achieved one of the highest literacy rates in the Arab world. The Iron Cage. Simultaneously, Saddam used the oil wealth to build the Mukhabarat, secret police, into one of the world's most feared intelligence services. This organization practiced systematic torture, enforced loyalty, and ensured the complete elimination of dissent. There were informants everywhere, making public criticism a literal death sentence. The final consolidation of power arrived in July 1979. After forcing President al-Bakr to resign, Saddam convened a party assembly. On live television, in a moment of chilling drama, he read out the names of traitors. These individuals were dragged out, weeping, and later executed, often by fellow party members forced to participate. This act was the bloody coronation of a dictator. From that moment on, Saddam's authority was absolute, maintained by fear, not consensus. The cult of personality, Saddam as Iraq's father figure. To maintain his absolute power, Saddam required more than just fear. He needed adoration. He constructed one of the most pervasive cults of personality in modern history, presenting himself as the embodiment of the nation. Saddam appeared everywhere, on enormous billboards, in every schoolroom, and on the front page of every newspaper. He adopted various symbolic roles, Saddam the warrior, echoing historical figures like the great Muslim general Saladin. Saddam the devout, despite the party's secular roots. He began publicly praying and emphasizing his lineage to the Prophet Muhammad. And Saddam the builder, seen laying bricks or shaking hands with farmers. Crucially, he positioned himself as the father of Iraq, tying the survival and prosperity of the state directly to his own life. The entire nation was turned into a stage, where the only character was Saddam Hussein. The First War, Iran-Iraq, 1980 to 1988. In September 1980, driven by the goal of regional dominance and the fear of the Shia revolutionary influence spreading from Iran, Saddam launched a full-scale invasion. This conflict, the Iran-Iraq War, was an 8-year disaster. It quickly devolved into a bloody stalemate reminiscent of World War. Trench warfare. Saddam received financial and material support from various international powers, including many Western nations, who saw him as a check against the radical regime in Tehran. The atrocities. To gain the upper hand, Saddam unleashed horrors on a scale previously unseen. He began the widespread use of internationally banned chemical weapons, mustard, gas and nerve agents against Iranian soldiers and, chillingly, against his own population. The Anfal campaign, 1987 to 1988, was a genocidal assault on Iraq's Kurdish minority. The campaign saw the systematic destruction of villages and the mass killing of tens of thousands of Kurds. The ultimate horror was the Halabja chemical attack in March 1988, where Iraqi jets dropped poison gas on a civilian town, killing 5,000 instantly. This act cemented Saddam's reputation as a war criminal. The war ultimately ended in a crippling stalemate, leaving Iraq exhausted and burdened with massive debt. The fatal miscalculation. The Gulf War and its aftermath. 1990 to 2003. Desperate to recoup his war debts, Saddam made his most fatal decision. On August 2, 1990, he invaded the oil-rich neighbor, Kuwait, accusing them of siphoning Iraqi oil. The international community responded swiftly. A US-led coalition launched Operation Desert Storm in January 1991, quickly rooting the Iraqi army in one of the most one-sided victories in military history. Though defeated, Saddam was controversially allowed to remain in power. The aftermath was a period of sustained suffering. Crippling UN sanctions were imposed, severely limiting Iraq's ability to import food, medicine, and technology. Saddam, however, maintained his grip through brutal force. He ruthlessly crushed internal uprisings by the Shia in the south and the Kurds in the north, ensuring his survival while the Iraqi people starved. The next decade was a slow, painful descent into isolation and increasing paranoia for the regime. The final chapter, invasion, capture, and execution, 2003 to 2006, citing Iraq's alleged weapons of mass destruction, which were later never found, and ties to terrorism. The United States and its allies launched a full-scale invasion in March 2003. Saddam's regime collapsed rapidly. The dictator went into hiding, forcing the US military into an 8-month manhunt. He was eventually captured in December 2003, found in a small, cramped subterranean spider hole near his hometown of Tikrit, a pathetic end for a man who had claimed to be the living embodiment of a nation. Saddam was tried by the Iraqi High Tribunal for crimes against humanity, specifically the Dujail massacre of 148 Shia men and boys. After a turbulent trial process, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. Saddam Hussein was executed by hanging on December 30, 2006. Conclusion and lasting legacy. The biography of Saddam Hussein is a harrowing case study in 20th century authoritarianism. His legacy is one of economic opportunity squandered, of calculated cruelty, and of endless war. While he enforced a brutal stability, his removal created a massive and violent power vacuum, a catastrophic event that continues to fuel regional instability, sectarian conflict, and the rise of extremist groups in the Middle East today. The shadow of his tyranny stretches far beyond his death. Now, I want to hear from you. Considering his 24-year reign, what single policy or act do you believe had the most profound, lasting impact on Iraq? Was it the nationalization of oil, the Iran-Iraq War, or the 2003 invasion itself? Let me know in the comments below. If you appreciate this kind of deep dive historical analysis, please hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.